Formula 1 was arguably at the height of its popularity in the mid to late 80s. Turbocharged monsters dominated the track with power outputs often passing 1,000 horsepower. All of this power had a number of downsides though. With turbo technology being relatively new and F1 being the pinnacle of motorsports, this made running a competitive turbocharged Formula 1 team tear-jerkingly expensive, to the point where factory teams were far faster than privateer entries. These small teams simply didn't even have the funds to keep up with the likes of McLaren, Williams and Lotus. But most importantly, running such high amounts of power made the cars extremely difficult to control, let alone drive in a competitive manner. The human cost of all of this mental speed became shockingly clear when the popular Italian driver Elio De Angelis died testing the Brabham BT55 at Paul Ricard in 1986. All of this caused FISA President Jean-Marie Balestre to step in and make radical changes to the Formula 1 rulebook. These changes heralded the end of F1's turbocharged era. 1988 was the last season that saw turbocharged cars compete, with Ayrton Senna and the McLaren MP44 winning the title in dominating fashion. The 1989 season was the first without forced inductions, with all teams required to run a 3.5 litre naturally aspirated engines. These new engine rules made the sport much more affordable, which led to a number of new teams jumping on board after 1986. One of these teams was Scuderia Coloni, founded in 1983 by Enzo Coloni, a racing driver from central Italy. Coloni had raced in Formula 2 and Formula 3, winning a Drivers' Championship 1 year before founding the team that would eventually take him to Formula 1. After a few years in Formula 3 and Formula 3000, Coloni's team, now named Enzo Coloni Racing Car Systems, made the jump to Formula 1. The teams debuted at the 1987 Italian Grand Prix with the hastily put together FC187, but it didn't score a single point during the season, partly because the team didn't compete in races overseas. The 1988 season was run with the improved FC188, but no points were scored. In 1989, the team set their sights on a new car. French designer Christian van der Plaine was brought in to draw up a new design, which left Coloni with a choice of engine. The two most common options were Judd's CV engine or the Cosworth DFR. The latter was chosen to be fitted to what would become the Coloni C3. The C3 was introduced at the 1989 Canadian Grand Prix, replacing an updated version of the FC188 that served as a placeholder until the new car was ready. Coloni appointed Brazilian Roberto Moreno as a driver. Moreno had previously raced for Lotus in Team AGS. He wasn't alone though, as he was joined by Frenchman Pierre-Henri Raffanel to form a two-car entry for the first time in Coloni's F1 history. With the new car ready, but suffering from a lack of testing, the two drivers were faced with getting the prospect of the C3 onto the grid. With 39 cars competing for 26 grid spots, the small teams were placed in a pre-qualifying session on Friday morning. The four fastest cars from pre-qualifying would advance to the main qualifying session, where they would once again have to fight for a spot on the grid. While Moreno was lucky enough to be able to skip this, Raffanel was confined to the Friday morning sessions, along with teams like Brabham, Acela and Zakspeed. During the C3's first outing, Raffanel came 13th and last in pre-qualifying, but Moreno somehow managed to grab the 26th grid spot and put the new car on the grid for its debut race. Moreno was on his way to finishing the race when disaster struck on lap 57. Gearbox problems meant the end for the Brazilian in Canada. After a cautiously optimistic start for Moreno in Montreal, Coloni got a reality check at the French Grand Prix. Raffanel came 11th in pre-qualifying, while Moreno came dead last in regular qualifying. Moreno did manage to qualify at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, but his race came to an end after just 2 laps due to a gearbox failure. From there, things went from bad to worse for Coloni's team. Moreno lost his guaranteed qualifying spot, so now both cars were confined to pre-qualifying. As a result, both drivers did not qualify in Germany, Hungary, Belgium and Italy consecutively. A final spark of hope came at the Portuguese Grand Prix. Moreno came 3rd in pre-qualifying and did even better in the main qualifying session, somehow dragging the C3 to a remarkable 15th place on the grid. It would prove to be Coloni's best qualifying results and the last time the team would start a race in F1. By this point, Pierre-Henri Raffanel had been replaced by Italian Enrico Battaglia, who came over from Formula 3000. He didn't fare much better, as he never managed to secure a grid spot. In typical Coloni fashion, Moreno's qualifying efforts did not grant success in the race itself. After just 11 laps, the C3's electrics went wrong and the Brazilian could not capitalise on the qualifying success as he was forced to retire. The last 3 races of the season were business as usual for Coloni. Neither Moreno nor Battaglia escaped free qualifying in Spain, Japan and Australia. Coloni would struggle for 2 more years in Formula 1, never again qualifying for a Grand Prix. After 1991, Enzo Coloni sold the team to Andrea Sassetti, who renamed the team to Andrea Motor Formula for the 1992 season. The Coloni C3 was an undertested and underdeveloped car that arrived too late and simply wasn't fast or reliable enough to have any kind of success in a cutthroat world that was post-turbocharged era Formula 1.